I like to travel through Spain using its network of secondary roads. It's a treasure that they have, and that leads us to discover incredible places. This year I decided to use it to go through some of the most underrated areas of Spain. I'm not going to go into much detail about each site, and I will make other more detailed videos about some of the stops. Some places, like the Castle of the Motor, will be additional stops, not included in this trip because I already knew them. We start in Madrigal de las Altas Torres, where Isabel the Catholic was born. The Gate of Orevolo indicates the way to follow. The Castle of Orevolo had many uses, the strangest being a grain silo. On the first ramps towards the Sierra de Gredos stands the castle of Mancio Spisa. Several legends try to explain such a curious name. Not far away is the castle of Sancho Estrada, in Villaviciosa, municipality of Sola Sancho. The light of the sunset was grandiose and gave the Sierra de Paramira a beautiful aspect. It was getting dark and I headed to a villa, where my hotel was. Its walls are one of the great monuments of Spain, and although they look more at sunset, they are always a good setting for a night walk. Many kilometers for this second day, circling Madrid by the beautiful road from Avila to Toledo, the National 403. A last visit to the walls, to have a daytime view, and Hinding to the Tahoe River. Not in this video, but nice to see, viewpoints over the El Burguillo Reservoir. I launched the drone from the river beach of Escalona. The best views of the castle are on the other side of the Alberche River, but the beach suited me better. A few kilometers further is Maqueda, with a peculiar church, a tower, and its castle. The church has a colourful door flanked by two arches. The next quick stop was in Barciense. The lion engraved on the tower of the castle was the heraldic symbol of its first owners. We have arrived at the Tahoe. The Barrancas de Burujon were on my list for years, and I finally got to know them. You should visit Toledo, if you haven't done so yet. What I didn't know and found spectacular was the castle of Almanacid de Toledo. Despite its state, it continues to impress and has unbeatable views over its region, with olive trees patches. If you feel like it, you could stop in Orgaz, and also at the castle of Las Guadalurzas. Thanks to the drone I could see it better, but it is not advisable to approach because there is loose livestock. Nobody wants a clash with a cow protecting her calf, or a bull protecting his territory. We are almost at another of the big stops of the day, Consuegra, with its imposing castle and its characteristic windmills. Don't fight them. Being this a windy land and scarce in water, the wind was the driving force to grind the grain. On the banks of a dry Guadiana is the city of Calatrava la Vieja, where a knightly order of warrior monks was founded. Unfortunately, it was closed to the public for improvements. Following the Calatravos, I went to Calatrava la Nueva, where they moved a few decades later. The day ended in Almagro. It has a beautiful old town. Although I couldn't visit the Corral de Comedias, I really enjoyed the walk. For this third day, I had planned to visit two places that have been on my list for years. But first, and since we are in Daimiel, you should visit Las Tublas, the largest inland wetland in Spain, which has a lot of history and great scientific interest. But I was here to visit another place, the Motia dell'Azua, the oldest well on the peninsula. Continuing on, we arrived at the second place, the Lagunas de Ruidera, starting from the castle of Peñarroya. Be careful here with the GPS, it tried to take me on non-existent tracks. The castle of Riopar is not much, but the views of the valley make up for it. What is worth it are the chorros of the Mundo River. Following through the mountain of Albacete, we can visit the modest but beautiful castle of Taibia, located in a truly unique environment. On the way to Murcia, the landscapes are a luxury and lead us to Morataya, whose narrow streets speak of its medieval past and invite you to explore it. I do not recommend driving through them. They are truly narrow. And we ended the day in the beautiful Caravaca de la Cruz, which exceeded my expectations, despite arriving late to see the basilica. This was a day of transition, with no major goals on my list, but the journey always surprises. I started in Arledo, much more beautiful than I expected, and with the beautiful and narrow Estrecho de las Arbolillas, which sometimes looks like a tunnel. In the village, the views and the remains of the castle and walls stand out. On a previous trip, I had passed through the ravines of Hebas, but I wanted to know another viewpoint, located inside them. The Tolmo de Minateda was a surprise. It was an ancient city that preserves remains from various eras. The guide who attended me was charming. Brief stop to stretch my legs in Albatana and see its aqueduct, and also a salt pan, the Olla Salada, with its characteristic halophyte vegetation. On the outskirts of Albacete is Chinchilla de Monte Aragon. Its castle, at the top of the town, dominates the region, and I was impressed by its moat. Walking through the old town, I passed by the beautiful Plaza de la Mancha, where the town hall is located, and then I visited the Cuevas del Agujero, which are cave dwellings. Alarcón has one of the most beautiful prints of a castle in Spain, but unfortunately it cannot be visited unless you are a guest of the national parador that it houses. Almost on my way were Paracuellos de la Vega and its castle, which must have been imposing. I deviated to be able to see it and continued on my way. The day ended in Cañada del Hoyo. It has a castle that cannot be visited, and some lagoons in some torcas. A torca is a sinkhole formed when a cave collapses. Cuenca is incredibly little known. It rises between the canyons of the Júcar and Oacar, and the view is spectacular. For me, a big surprise. On that trip, I also passed through the Enchanted City, which seems like something out of a dream. Both are a must-visit. What I missed then was the birth of the Cuevo River. Nearby, the Júcar, Tajo, and Toria rivers are born. Another place where I didn't stop then was in the Cima de Frias, past the birth of the Tajo. Just like with the Torcas, the collapse of an underground cave caused a sinking of the ground. In Calamade, you can find the Los Arcos Canyon and a beautiful hiking route by walkways. The route goes up to Frias, although there are shorter routes. For many, Albarracin is the most beautiful town on the peninsula. I won't argue with that. It's worth getting lost in its streets, especially on a day without people. On the outskirts, you can find the remains of the Santa Croce Castle and a Roman aqueduct excavated by pickaxe. In Peresensa, they have a castle made of rodino, a type of sandstone that gives it that unique reddish color. It was part of the defenses of the ephemeral Taifar of Albarracin. More well known is the castle of Zafra, where a key scene from Game of Thrones was filmed. The castle was rebuilt from the 70s of the last century. The route took me through Imbid, where they have a small castle that was restored a few years ago. From here, following a picturesque road, we can visit the Mesa River Canyon. The stretch between Haraba and Kalmaza is spectacular and has a rock sanctuary in the Outseka ravine. Very close, in Ibdes, there are 2 dry caves you can visit for a couple of euros, one of them converted into a chapel, and a waterfall that delights painters. Sometimes there are places that are so well spoken of that you feel a bit lazy to visit them, so as not to be disappointed. My first stop of the day is a clear example. I had very high expectations with the Monasterio de Piedra, and I must say that it exceeded all of them. Piedra is the river that gives its name to the monastery. Chocolate was cooked here for the first time in Europe. After the disentailment, it was bought by a private individual. His son Juan Federico Montadas was the creator of the gardens and founded the first fish farm in Spain here. Calatayud is close by, and we can approach to know its castles. The Castillo Mayor or de Ayud is the most important. Following the route, we can visit the Castillo de la Raya, which is on the same border between the kingdoms of Castilla and Aragon. Very close, Santa Maria de Huerta surprises with its Cistercian refectory, and Sigüenza, with its castle parada, its old town and its cathedral. We enter La Alcarria, one of the regions with the most personality in the central area of Spain, and which gained fame thanks to the book by Camilo José Cilla Journey to La Alcarria. There is a lot to see, and I chose to see some of the several castles that watch over the Henares Valley, like Hadraque, at whose feet the river runs. Instead of going to Ita, I preferred to visit the viewpoints of Trijuica, from where you can see a good part of the valley, having the Sierra de Guadarrama and the Sierra Norte de Madrid on the horizon. Torija, with its castle, is the last stop of the day. In its day it was a walled city, but today there is almost nothing left of it. Just a tower. The journey ends today and there are few stops left before returning home. But the first ones are linked by water. In Valsaine, the water from a stream is carried to a now ruined palace through an aqueduct that saves the Eresma River. It dates from the times of Charles I of Habsburg, although some believe it to be Roman. Water is the protagonist in the gardens of La Granja de San Ildefonso, with numerous fountains and ponds. Water is the raison d'etre of the Segovia Aqueduct, one of the most important and famous monuments in Spain. It carried water to the Alcázar. If it sounds familiar, it's because it's the castle that inspired Disney's Coca. The ancient Roman Corca has remains of walls and also a large castle, built by the Fonseca in the 15th century. The journey is almost over and we make a brief stop at the Iscar Castle, already in the province of Valladolid. Just like in Coca, the Castilian pine forests dominate the landscape. And the last stop before returning home is the Fuensaldaña Castle. Despite its shape, it was actually a palace with a small garrison. And so the journey ends. I hope you liked it and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.